Have you guys heard of this movie called In the Gray? So Asa Gonzalez is something of a fixer, and she runs this company where she has a team of people who are essentially hackers, and then another team led by Jake Gyllenhaal and Henry Cavill, who are essentially the physical aspect of what she does. And after a corrupt businessman who was working for Rosamund Pike doesn't pay the debts that he's owed to her company, Rosamund Pike reluctantly hires Rachel and her team to get the money back that they're owed. This businessman, who they call Salazar, is relatively untouchable. He is extremely rich, and usually after a deal, he ends up killing whoever he's been dealing with. So Rachel, with the help of her team, are attempting to get this money back by undermining his businesses so that she can force a meeting between herself and Salazar. But because he's such a dangerous guy, it's up to Jake Gyllenhaal and Henry Cavill to plan for every possible scenario in which Salazar could outsmart them and kill Rachel in the process. So the main objective in the movie is to keep Rachel safe. So the first half of the movie is primarily Rachel's hacker team trying to dismantle Salazar's businesses and remove any budgetary funding he may be getting. At one point, they take away his boat and his plane, which seems to be a really big hit for him. And while all that's going on, Jake Gyllenhaal and Henry Cavill and their team are coordinating an extraction protocol to get Rachel out when this eventual meeting does happen. But Rosamund Pike's company doesn't play fair and breaks the rules of their agreement. And as a result, Salazar decides to take Rachel for ransom. So for the most part, I thought this movie was a bit too weak. They relied very heavily on narration and used a lot of words like offshore accounts and shell companies to add some stakes, but there was a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. And the first half of the movie was relatively slow because they spent a tremendous amount of time practicing for this potential heist. Now, the second half was a little bit better as it pushed into much higher stakes that we probably should have gotten from the beginning. But I think the biggest problem with this movie was that they just relied a little bit too much on the fact that they had Jake Gyllenhaal and Henry Cavill. And as a result, it felt like they didn't care very much about the story itself because they had these big names attached. And I think that was to their detriment. So I'm only going to give this one 2 bangs out of 5. This has been Bang Bang with Bam Bam.